Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, the NATO Gaggle is at an end, and they issued their usual huge, high-sounding communique, naturally all about Ukraine and everything that they're going to do for Ukraine. But there were some interesting things that they also promised to do. And as we said before, NATO is really this cancer that which continues to sort of metastasize. It can it never just stays in one place. It just moves into other healthier organs.
It's a shapeshifter as
It's
well.
exactly, and so almost nothing is safe from the NATO metastasis. So let's take a look at this statement that they issued, the communique. And here that they do the usual thing of we fully support Ukraine's right to choose, blah blah. Ukraine has become increasingly interoperable and politically integrated with the alliance. We welcome the concrete progress Ukraine has made since the Vilnius summit on its required democratic, economic, and security reforms. And as Ukraine continues this vital work, we will continue to support it on its irreversible path to full Euro-Atlantic integration, including NATO membership. Irreversible. We reaffirm that we will be in a position to extend an invitation to Ukraine to join the alliance when the allies agree and conditions are met. So it's pretty much similar to what they said.
Yeah, I mean it's a slight refinement of vagueness. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And then the summit decisions by NATO and the NATO Ukraine Council, combined with allies' ongoing work, constitute a bridge to Ukraine's membership in NATO. I like all these metaphors.
Tony Blinken said it was a well-lit bridge.
Well-lit bridge. But it's interesting, all these metaphors, like a bridge, or a welding on the bridge, or an arc. And allies will continue to support Ukraine's progress on interoperability, as well as additional democratic and security sector reforms, which NATO foreign ministers will continue to assess, and so on. And then it goes on. This is where it got quite a little bit menacing. It says, we urge all countries not to provide any kind of assistance to Russia's aggression. We condemn all those who are facilitating and thereby prolonging Russia's war in Ukraine.
Yeah, but they don't mention the fact that NATO is prolonging the war.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting as to who is prolonging this war. I mean, they keep saying, Stoltenberg keeps saying that the more weapons we send in, the faster we get to the negotiating table. I mean, it's clearly no empirical evidence for this whatsoever. But we're going to do more because that's the fastest road to peace.
Send more weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine becomes smaller. Okay,
yes,
I
got it exactly. The PRC, that's the People's Republic of China, has become a decisive enabler.
Enabler. Here we go. This is a good word. I like this.
I like it too.
You're an enabler.
You're not just an enabler, you're a decisive enabler.
Okay.
You could be an indecisive enabler, but here you're a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine through its so-called, quote, no limits, unquote, partnership, and its large-scale support for Russia's defense industrial base.
Well, that's a intentional, in my opinion, misinterpretation of what no limits means. But
that's right. I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't think it means very much, but
yeah, but I don't think, in my reading of this and looking at the succession of summits that these two leaders have had, I've always interpreted as that basically the Sino-Russian relationship. There are no major barriers to
That's how
I look at it,
yeah,
and
that's
not
how I read
Ukraine
it.
specific at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. This increases the threat Russia poses to its neighbors and to Euro-Atlantic security. Well, this is very, very strange because you're throwing all this weaponry into Ukraine, real stuff, real weaponry. We're not talking about dual-use technology or anything. These are real lethal weapons that you're giving to Ukraine. And you're accepting China's not doing that. I mean, you accept China is not providing any weaponry to Russia. Your complaint is that they're using dual-use technology. Well, dual use, by definition, it could be almost anything is dual use.
Yeah.
And so for NATO to get so indignant about what China's doing, you can see the Chinese get a little bit pissed off about this. You are funneling all this military hardware, and you lecture us because we continue to do business with Russia.
Well, we could see a NATO war on Chinese toasters and refrigerators.
Yes.
Okay. They're shapeshifters. Okay.
Yes.
This is the only alliance that stands up to toasters.
That's
and don't
it.
you forget it.
That's it. We call on the PRC as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council with a particular responsibility to uphold the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, to cease all material and political support to Russia's war effort. Well, who are you to make these demands on China? Who exactly are you? It's like, you don't have a UN Security Council resolution to support you. So what's the basis of your making these demands? As they say, it's a permanent member of the Security Council, and you're making these demands.
Okay. Does NATO have a permanent seat?
I don't think so. No. Nor does the EU.
I mean, what is said differently from what George said? Is that what is their legal standing?
None.
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 I mean, you could get the New York Bridge Club to come out on this. It'll have just as much meaningful impact.
Right. That's right. It says this includes the transfer of dual-use materials such as weapons, components, equipment, and raw materials that serve as inputs for Russia's defense sector. The PRC.
The thing, George, that is never mentioned here is that, for the last 50 years, the West has intentionally destroyed its industrial base. It wants to financialize everything, and it wants to export its capacity. But Russia never did that. Never. Right. Russia always kept its industrial base, particularly when it comes to defense.
Right.
Okay, so I don't know who wrote this. It's very tedious, but this is just propaganda. I mean, can you just throw in one example? This Chinese toaster, how is it changing?
Right. No, that's right. And that's the whole point of this, the use of this dual use technology. I mean, that's what they did to, that's how they maintained their sanctions regimes against other countries, because, it's dual use. Sorry, and they did that, all during the 90s against Iraq, and Iraq was suffering serious problems. Couldn't get a water purification system, couldn't get anything for their hospitals because, sorry, it's a dual use technology, and so you're denied it. So the PRC cannot enable the largest war in Europe in recent history without this negatively impacting its interests and reputation. So
again, it's NATO that's enabling the largest war in Europe in recent history.
Right, but notice the threatening language here. And then it says, the PRC continues to pose systemic challenges to Euro-Atlantic security. How does the PRC do that? There's the PRC. There's the kind of Euro-Atlantic. I mean, how does the PRC threaten Euro-Atlantic security? NATO has expanded right into the South China Sea and the East China Sea. And you're saying China is posing a threat to Euro-Atlantic security?
Okay, this is code and not very sophisticated code. That means to counter this systemic challenge, NATO has to go to the Pacific. Sorry, we
Right,
have to.
exactly.
And that's what they're doing. That's
right.
mission creep. Okay.
It is, and that's what we'll see through this document, the mission creep. Then it says, we have seen sustained malicious cyber and hybrid activities, including disinformation stemming from the PRC. This is standard NATO boilerplate speak, cyber and hybrid. No one exactly knows what the hell that is. Disinformation, that means anything that you don't agree with, emanating from one of these China news outlets. Oh, hybrid activity. Hybrid again, you know, could be anything is hybrid. We call on the PRC to uphold its commitment to act responsibly in cyberspace. We are concerned by developments in the PRC space capabilities and activities. We call on the PRC to support international efforts to promote responsible space behavior. The PRC.
I started out shapeshifter, so now they're in outer NATO in outer space. Stay tuned.
That's right.
You know, it's interesting. It's like, you know, the Star Trek franchise. You know,
right.
You had the original series, and you had the Next Generation and Deep Star 6 or whatever it was called.
Right.
Then you had I don't know, 5 or 6 others. See, the franchise never ends. It never. There's always a new franchise on the horizon.
Right. That's right.
Here we go. Space, the final frontier.
But if we talk about space now, NATO, particularly the United States, you know, they have all these satellites, which they use in order to wage their war against Russia. Now, that's a sort of, you know, using space to conduct war. China's not doing that. China's not using space to conduct any kinds of wars. NATO is. So it says the PRC continues to rapidly expand and diversify its nuclear arsenal with more warheads and a larger number of sophisticated delivery systems. Okay, well, and you're not doing that. I mean, you don't. You know, there are no more arms control agreements. So what, you know, it's a little bit much to sort of berating the Chinese. And then we urge the PRC to engage in strategic risk reduction discussions and promote stability through transparency. We remain open to constructive engagement with the PRC, including to build reciprocal transparency with a view to safeguarding the alliance's security interests.
Well, the same group of people that walked away from one control agreement from to another. Okay, this is the same people.
Again, you know, it's very interesting.
And the audacity to talk about transparency. The audacity of it all.
But as I like this, the alliance's security interests. What alliance security interests? I mean, it's pretty much, you know, anything at all that, you know, that you don't like, you just say, well, our alliance's security interests are under threat. What security interests are under threat? At the same time, we are boosting our shared awareness, enhancing our resilience and preparedness, and protecting against the PRC's coercive tactics and efforts to divide the alliance. So we can rest easy. Well, thank God you're not defenseless. You know, then, you know, you're defending yourself against these terrible PRC.
How is China trying to divide the alliance, George?
I have no idea. It's, you know, exactly. I mean, how is it
trading with individual members of it?
Well, I guess maybe, you know, the good friends, Viktor Orban, but I don't know.
I mean, who in Europe is being forced to trade with China?
No one.
No. So I mean, how again is it dividing?
Yeah, that's right. Then now it goes on into the European Union, which is always very interesting how the European Union remains a unique and essential partner for NATO. NATO EU cooperation has reached unprecedented levels. Oh,
sure has.
So exciting.
So
yeah. In the context of Ukraine, NATO EU cooperation has become more significant. NATO recognizes the value of a stronger and more capable European defense that contributes positively to transatlantic and global security and is complementary to and interoperable with NATO. So I like this kind of this global security. Ask Hungary whether Europe is now more secure through this close NATO EU partnership. What have you actually done? How has this in any way made Europe more secure? I mean, this NATO EU partnership is being driven by these clear warmongers, the warmongers such as the Baltic Chihuahuas and Poland, who want to use this NATO EU partnership to wage a war against Russia. I mean, that's pretty much their agenda, how to provoke a war with Russia, which somebody else is going to fight, not them. Anyway, it goes on, and here, this is funny. This is the Western Balkans, which is always interesting, like, because what's the Eastern Balkans? We never hear about the Eastern Balkans. We only ever hear about the Western Balkans. but because I guess it sounds better. Balkans is a kind of pejorative word. So in order to avoid using the pejorative term Balkans, you say the Western Balkans. Oh, that's good. They're the Western part. They're like us. They're Western. And the Black Sea regions are of strategic importance for the alliance. They're kind of of strategic importance for the people who live there. I mean, well, it's for the alliance. That's what matters. Well, what about the people who actually live there? We remain strongly committed to their security and stability. Oh, good. And then he says, we will continue.
They broke up Yugoslavia?
Exactly. You broke it up into 7 states. And its security and stability is what you're concerned with. And says, we will continue to enhance our political dialogue and practical cooperation with the Western Balkans in order to support reforms, regional peace, and security. So the moment you read this kind of verbiage, the one thing you're not going to do is security and stability. In other words, you're saying, we are now going to create more instability. We're going to foster conflict. We're going to try and provoke as much hatred and antagonism as possible through our reform program and regional and peace and security, and to counter malign influence.
We know what that is.
We know what that is, malign influence. We have to counter this malign. There's a lot of malignant.
Yeah, so if it's like it's like Balkans, malign. Okay,
they're very malign.
Nobody wants to be called malign.
Okay. No, that's right. Yes. Including disinformation. Disinformation is back. Disinformation, hybrid, and cyber threats. This is NATO speak. We had that in the case of China. Now we've got more hybrid cyber threats. Apparently, it's in the Western Balkans.
Yeah.
And again, we know who's behind all of those.
Well, it's interesting here is that what NATO does is create instability in the name of stability, because when you have instability, that's where you can divide and conquer. You inflame ethnic hatreds. You support some of the most odious people in these societies. This is a well-known playbook. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's the way NATO operates. And so when they say, oh, we are committed to security and stability, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to enhance political dialogue. We'll support reforms, regional peace and security, and we're going to counter malign influence. This is what we're going to do in order to foster security and stability.
Has anybody asked anybody in the Western Balkans if they want this favor?
No one ever asks, I mean, NATO is a protection racket, and that's what it is. I mean, it's basically there to move in and essentially say, nice country you've got here. Shame if something were to happen to it.
Saying that to Georgia right now.
Exactly. This is really, really nice. Very, very pretty. Love the seaside, love the scenery. Be a shame if war were to break out here. Democratic values. Oh, good. The rule of law. Oh, yeah, good. Domestic reforms. Good neighborly relations. In other words, all of the things that you don't do are vital for regional cooperation and Euro-Atlantic integration. So in other words, you are going to get Euro-Atlantic integration whether you like it or not. And if you want to resist Euro-Atlantic integration, we're going to hit you so hard, your head's going to come out on the other side of.
Democratic values, the rule of law, domestic reforms, and good neighborly relations. Well, why do you need Euro-Atlantic integration to keep those things?
Right. You don't.
It's not a prerequisite.
And we look to continued progress in this regard. So this is good. Continue.
Oh, it's a project. It's a project.
That's right. That's right. This is as menacing as you can get. I mean, you're reading this and you think, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to stop this? I mean, this is the tentacles of NATO. I mean, they're going to be everywhere. We remain committed to NATO's continued engagement in the Western Balkans, including through NATO-led KFOR. So it's now, again, 30 years. It's never going to end. I mean, that's your part of your permanent presence there through KFOR, and continue to foster antagonism between your Serb agents, because a lot of the people in Serbs are basically working for NATO, and your Kosovo Albanian agents. They're basically at each other's throats, which is exactly the way you want it. We reaffirm our continued support to allied regional efforts aimed at upholding security, safety, stability, freedom of navigation in the Black Sea region, including, as appropriate, through the 1936 Montreux Convention. Now, I found this paragraph difficult to understand. What exactly do they mean here? I mean, as appropriate? You mean when you don't like the 1936 Montreux Convention, you're just going to ignore it? I mean, why bring this up? What the hell has the 1936 Montreux Convention got to do with NATO? I mean,
well, basically is that we're not going to let this convention get in our way in turning the Black Sea.
Moving into the Black Sea, exactly.
That's what it's saying. Okay.
That's exactly what it's saying.
George is right. I mean, this convention, we can work with it, but if we disagree with it, then it won't be appropriate.
That's right, including as appropriate. I mean, why bring this up? You think, well, surely, that's just there. That's a given. The 1936 Montreux Convention, including as appropriate. So exactly when it's inconvenient, and it is inconvenient because there are limits to the warships that you can introduce into the Black Sea according to the Montreux Convention. So it is inconvenient. So we'll note it, note the existence of the convention, and ignore it. I mean, that's what we normally do. And then NATO's southern neighborhood. This is southern neighborhood. Apparently, we have a neighborhood. It's the southern neighborhood. Provides opportunities for cooperation in issues of mutual interest. So you fellows down south, I've got a great opportunity for cooperation.
Hey, neighbor.
Hey, neighbor. Howdy, neighbor.
It's the NATO greeter. Hey, neighbor.
Yeah, that's right. I've got this great opportunity to sell you issues of mutual interest. What are these issues of mutual interest? We kind of define these mutual interests. Through our partnerships, we aim to foster greater security and stability in the Middle East and Africa.
Here we go again.
Now, the one thing we can say is that NATO and security and stability in the Middle East and Africa don't easily sit well with one another. We saw what happened with the NATO attack on Libya, what it did to security and stability in North Africa and the Sahel. But this, I mean, they churn this stuff out, and it's the exact opposite of everything that they say.
Yeah, well, particularly since, I mean, it's amazing that they would come up with this point now when France has been given, and the United States, pink slips in the Sahel. Okay, sure. I mean, are they even vaguely aware of what's going on the ground? See, this is all projection. Okay,
right. Exactly. Today we have adopted an action plan.
They always have action plans
for a stronger, more strategic, and result-oriented approach toward our southern neighborhood. You kind of feel bad for the poor southern neighborhood. You just the
We've
tentacles.
decided you're in the neighborhood, and since
Good.
you're in the neighborhood, we're going to make the rules since you're in the neighborhood.
Because you're in the
We don't
neighborhood.
care if you don't consider yourself part of the neighborhood. Well, that's that's a problem you have to
That's right.
work.
Exactly. And we have a partnership, because we have partnerships with our neighbors. But I don't want to be a partner. I think you do want to be a partner. Um, which will be regularly updated. Well, I'm sure, we'll provide regular updates.
I'm making a list and checking it twice.
That's it. We have invited the Secretary General, Stoltenberg, but now it's going to be Rutte. We have invited the Secretary General to designate a special representative for the southern neighborhood. Yeah, can I, who wants that job? That's right, exactly. That's right. I wonder who's going to apply for that job. For the southern neighborhood, who will serve as NATO's focal point for the region.
That's right. NATO's enforcer.
That's right, exactly. So you got NATO's now. They've got this training center set up for Ukraine in Germany, but now they're going to be doing this training. Notice how everything is very vague. What exactly are you going to be doing in the southern neighborhood? They leave it very vague. They just know we're going to be here, and we're going to be setting up action plans for whatever. And again, coordinate NATO's efforts. And then climate change. Well, I was worried. I was getting a little worried because I thought, well, surely they're going to have something to say about climate change. And say, yeah, we'll be integrating climate change considerations into all core tasks and will enhance our energy security efforts. Climate change is a defining challenge with a profound impact on our security. NATO remains committed to becoming the leading international organization for understanding and adapting to the impacts of climate change and extreme weather on security. I don't understand what any of that means, to be honest. It's...
What it'd be better if they thought what their charter says: be defensive, work towards peace, make sure conflicts do not break out, have confidence-building measures through arms control. No,
they never.
To be the leading international organization for understanding and adapting
to the impact
of climate change.
But again, what's so bizarre is that climate change. So I thought CO2 emissions. Okay, so you want to do basically, you don't want to fight wars because that kind of leads to CO2 emissions. I mean, if that's your problem, but they just leave all this blank. They just use these buzzwords, climate change, our southern neighborhood, and then but we've got a plan of action, coordination, cooperation.
Who is the biggest polluter in the world?
Yes.
What organization? The Pentagon is
the
biggest
Pentagon,
polluter in the world.
Yeah. And then energy is a critical capability enabler to NATO's core tasks and military operations. What has that got to do with climate change? I mean, it sounds like you want to use a lot of energy. You're planning to use an awful lot of energy.
Well, if you got energy in the neighborhood, who's going to get the energy?
We're going to get the energy. We are committed to ensuring secure, resilient, and sustainable energy supplies. That's good. That's
why NATO has to go to the Middle East.
That's right. And again, well, what does that got to do with climate change? I mean, what you got in the Middle East is a lot of fossil fuels. So they bring in climate change. Oh, good, climate change. And then everything they say, yeah, and we're going to grab any energy resources going. NATO and allies are adapting to, I have a hard time when they put this uppercase A for allies. It just drives me up the wall that they do this, the allies.
Well, there's a synonym here is, to use an historical term, the church. This is the church.
Yes.
Okay. This is an apostolic church.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously without any kind of religious content, but it's something you pay homage to.
Right.
It has authority. It's kind of like the papacy. Okay.
Right. Yes. No. That's right. And then, oh, good, women. I was worried about that. We are committed to integrating NATO's it's ambitious, women, peace and security and human security agendas across all continents. Again, you think, hey, well, the best way of protecting women would be not to have wars. Best way to do that would probably be to dissolve NATO. Because if you're going to have wars, you're not going to do anything to protect women.
I think George is right. And I think we found the definitive rationale right now. NATO should be dissolved in the name of in protecting women. I think
that's right.
We're done. We're done. We're done.
Today, we have endorsed an updated women's peace and security policy, which will enhance the integration of gender perspectives across all NATO's activities and structures. And don't ask, what exactly is a gender perspective? And advance gender equality within the alliance.
You know, George, when they're building the next generation of tanks, I think they need a feminine perspective on that.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I think they need a feminine.
And they shouldn't objectify women when they make these things.
No. I think that's the kind of thing they do. You know, they have special uniforms for women. Make sure that women's sanitary products are available in all the tanks. All the tanks come with women's sanitary products, and so on. So that's the gender equality. We will also continue to strengthen our human security approach related to the protection of civilians and cultural property. Because protection of civilians and cultural property is what I most associate NATO with. They're very strong on cultural property. We saw that, when they were bombing Serbia, how determined they were to protect cultural property.
See, NATO wants to be all things to everyone. George and I have talked about this endlessly, of how they're always pitching for a reason to exist, and then they try to pitch the necessity that they exist.
Right. At a time when international law and fundamental norms are challenged, we remain fully committed to international humanitarian law. So every time they say these kinds of things, the exact opposite. I mean, when you read this document, and we went through, it's a very long document, so I only, brought by the lowlights.
Thank you.
Could have been worse. But it's the exact opposite. The meaning is the opposite of what they intend to say.
And well, they can say, we're here and we ain't going away.
That's right. That's right. Oh, well, we're going to be doing this and we're going to be doing that. So what are they promising? So they're promising we're going to continue this war in Ukraine in perpetuity. We're going to just keep this war going. We don't actually have any kind of a strategy. We don't, other than to keep it going. And in the meantime, we're probably going to, try and start something with China. Probably foster a little bit of instability in North Africa and the Middle East, the Western Balkans, and this is great. This is NATO. Congratulations, happy 75th birthday party.
Yeah. Well, and it's also when you see how ambitious their agenda is. I've said this before. What they want to do is they want to replace international law. They want to push aside the United Nations. They push aside the United Nations Security Council, because when you do that, then they have a free hand. They will decide what international law is. They will decide what the rule of law is. They will decide what is humanitarian law. They will decide this all unilaterally. Okay. They don't want, what they feel that they're restrained by what most people would call international norms.
Right.
They want to be unrestrained in their ambitions. And it's boilerplate when it comes to Russia, and we don't need to spend much time on that. But what really was interesting in that document, I'm glad George pointed it out, was the focus on China. It shows
that's right. And I think that they are in the business of kind of creating a kind of a world division. I mean, they want to have NATO at the center of it, and then the various satellite states of NATO. So the Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea.
They've identified Kenya as a strategic partner.
That's right. And then you've got the rest. You know, it's kind of interesting. I mean, how they're dividing up the world, and you know, there's the United Nations, obviously, but once these NATO powers decide that they're not getting anything out of the United Nations, and you know that may well come to that decision that they're just not, it's not serving their purposes, then they will just create their own alternative United Nations. And I think that that you know we could well be coming to something like that. Say, you know, after all, you know, it's kind of amazing that we have a United Nations, because you know the fact that all the great powers have decided that it's worth staying in this organization. They didn't do that to the League of Nations. League of Nations, it just dissolved once the great powers decided we don't need this. And so far, you know, the United Nations has survived, but there may well come a moment, you know, not too distant future, they'll say, the West will say, we don't need this. We're not getting anything out of it.
But the good news is, that this BRICS format, and I don't want to say just BRICS, but the idea of BRICS, they may be forced to do the same thing.
No, I think there will be. I mean, I think if the United Nations essentially kind of dissolves, then there will be an alternative. There'll be, I think, then two alternative versions of the United Nations, and then I mean, once you've got the Western version, then you're going to have the
that's where we're going.
The alternative, where we're going based on BRICS, and
because in October, I mean, now it's just kind of drips and drabs coming out, but there's going to be an alternative to the SWIFT system that's going to be introduced. Okay, now how that will. There's the ambition to do it. There's a plan to do it. How it will come into play, we still don't know. But already this is a goal they want, and this is to be able to stay, to keep at arm's length these Western financial institutions and institutions like NATO that has no legal standing in the world.
Right. Yeah. So that's why it's so interesting that when one looks at the NATO and the EU, how they're kind of creating this overarching structure with global ambitions.
Yep. And they're doing it with a military alliance, George.
That's right. Yeah. This is a threat to EuroAtlantic.
This is not a green alliance, okay? Right. This is not a fertilizer alliance. This is a military alliance.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's a threat. You know, we have to defend ourselves against this threat. You know, who's threatening you? You know, they at no point anywhere other than say, well, this threat to our security and so on. What threat? You kind of completely invented this. It's all, you know, all in your imagination, but you're mobilizing half the world, and essentially a kind of something that you've just invented out of whole cloth.
Yep, that's right. And this will engender separate globalizations,
right?
A new internet, it all across the board, because NATO feels threatened. Right. No, what people are going to do is they see NATO as the threat, and they have to create institutions. And there is safety in numbers, and people are beginning to realize that. Okay, right. As you stand up against NATO on your own, you're going to be crushed.
Yeah, exactly.
They have all the tools.
Yeah,
and they're very familiar tools. We watch it all the time in real time.
No, that's right, and I think this document gives you a good indication of what they're.
You know, another thing is, you know, I always kind of look at the corporeality of it all. Is that there are people saying, yeah, there's a career in this one here. This is a big project, and I want to climb the ladder. Okay, I could you know, retire on this one. Okay, there are a lot of people that think that way. You know, NATO is an institution that's going to be very well funded.
Right.
Okay, there's going to be and there's already been enormous amounts of careerism there.
Yeah.
You know, and the way we survive is to expand. I mean, the Roman Empire conquered the known world out of self-defense, right?
Yes. Yeah.
NATO wants to reenact that.
Yes.
Replay that.
That's right. And that's why they have all these projects, these plans of action. The NATO Secretary General is going to appoint a Southern representative. He's going to appoint a Ukraine representative. So these are all big offices with lots and lots of
it's like,
people to employ.
When Pontius Pilate was, sent to Palestine, this is exactly the same thing. It's the Imperial Representative to look after the interests of the empire.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. When people tell you who they are, believe them. Read this document.
Yeah, that's right.
And I ask anyone to read it or go through what we went through and tell me, how is this in self-defense?
Exactly. Yeah. How is this in self-defense? That's right. Even on that very basis, which they give so much space to, Ukraine, there's nothing to do with self-defense. Nothing whatever to do with self-defense. I mean, from the start, you provoke this. That's obvious even to, people like Nigel Farage. Say someone like Nigel Farage says, yeah, NATO provoked this war. You provoked this, and this you claim as some sort of a threat.
Depending on the number you want to take, I've heard from 17 to 22% of Russia is in control of 1991 Ukrainian border. So let's just say it's 20%, rounded up. Okay, after what, almost 3 years, but they're threatening Poland.
Yeah. That's right.
You have to, again, I've used this phrase many, many times. It's either 007 or Keystone Cops. You have to have, it can't be.
That's right. That's exactly. Exactly. And that's right. And that's what the Biden and the rest of them say. Oh, it's been so fantastic. We stopped Russia. Ukraine is, stop Russia. But if Putin gets his way, he's not going to stop with Ukraine. How's that going to happen? You say, well, Ukraine has apparently defeated Russia, but if Russia wins, then it's not going to stop with Ukraine. It's going to, march to the English Channel. It makes no sense. But Biden comes out with this stuff, and the media say, well, Biden, he has a mastery of foreign policy. He understands. He was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
We don't even know if he can dress himself in the morning.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, considering, he's a master of foreign policy, he's got his fingerprints on every single catastrophe in the last half century.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he seems to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's proud of what it did in Yugoslavia.
Exactly. And he brought that up in one of his speeches this week, how proud he was of that, which he played an important role in. Whipping up the hysteria over the Serbs. But his fingerprints are all over, including the invasion of Iraq, which again he played a prominent role in. So, I mean, the deep state who kind of installed Biden in 2020, they knew what they were doing. This is the guy that he's been groomed for that position for a long time.
Let's see this, and we can end on this here because we're going backwards. But this whole discussion about Kamala Harris, on the surface, this person is completely incapable of being a serious decision maker. But that's not what the job description is. The job description is, will you do what you're told?
Right.
We'll give you all the tools necessary, as long as you don't have dementia, right. Okay. But I mean, this fear that people have of Kamala Harris, it's not because she's incompetent. I mean, she is incompetent, but the fear is that you'll be passing the baton on to people that were not elected. We won't know who they are, and she will just be a cop. That is the perfect president, everyone. Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden is the perfect president, except for he's got dementia. That they didn't count on that being known. Right. So don't count out Kamala Harris because she's an ideal president.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
If just reading the NATO document, you know, I can do that.
Yeah,
I can do that. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, everybody. George did us a huge favor by dissecting that horrid
Right.
document. Okay.
Right.
I know it much better now than I did before, and I hope you do too. That's the reason why, if I can say, that tip jar is there.
The
Okay.
tip jar, that's the reason the
Yeah,
tip jar is
you know,
there. It's not,
I look at people like Piers Morgan, and I watch some of these interviews, and you know the conclusion I draw all the time. Why don't you do the work?
Yeah.
Do the work.
Yeah.
Look at the document. Don't listen to what some clown at the New York Times had to say about it. I don't care what the New York Times says. I'm interested in the document. That's what George does. He does the document. He
Right.
does the forensic work.
Yeah.
And you know, we can gossip all we want about what someone said, but what do people sign up to?
Yeah.
And that's what George does. This is what this podcast does.
That's right. That's exactly
All right.
right. Yeah.
All right, everybody. This is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. I hear pattering of paws. This is Friday. That means George and I'll reconvene doing our Sunday wrap. We'll do a live stream on Monday, and then George is back solo on Tuesday.
Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, suggestions, ideas, opinions, and on the way out the door, you know, think about Johnny Apple, and he, you know, he feels very strongly. He says, "Yeah, I'm getting sick to death of Piers Morgan, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore." So, you know, if you want alternative sources of news and information, and then Johnny Apple is the one who's going to provide it. So let's put some money into that tip jar. That'll put him into a better mood. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, we'll make him a little bit happier. And that's a nice thought. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.